It's Friday, and I'm back with the next in our Fanzine Friday series. Today we're taking a look at Miser's Hoard number 1. Please stick around. I'm AZ Mountaineer, and this is our channel, Old School Rules, where we celebrate the community of old school gamers and grognards who like classic RPGs, miniatures, magazines, and everything that goes with it. Each week on the Fanzine Friday series, we take a fanzine from my collection off the shelf for a closer look. Today, that's Miser's Hoard number 1 from 1982. Hope you enjoy the video. Today we're going to start looking at a new fanzine from the United Kingdom called Miser's Hoard. This comes to us starts in 1982. This is the August-September inaugural edition. This is the size we're used to. It's heavy stock yellow cover and regular pages with one staple through the middle. This is a fun one. It runs, I think, for 8 issues. I have all of those, so we'll talk about those here over the next couple of months. This fanzine is produced by J.P. McKeown, Ian McKeown, Peter Walker, and then Chris Carlton has credit for the artwork, it says in the introduction. Let's take a look at the art. Pretty simple. First issue, we just have a knight here in the middle with his two-handed sword, looking like he's mean and ready for battle. Here's our table of contents. We have a brief editorial introduction talking about the fanzine that they're going to put together. You know, a lot of these guys sort of say, hey, you're probably saying to yourself, one more fanzine, do we really need another one? Their goal, they say, is to provide ideas and innovation for gamers and dungeon masters to make their games better, but they have the typical things, as we'll mention here in a minute. A DM's guide, which are tips for dungeon masters. Pandora's box, which are their new monsters. Never have enough. The Wondrous Pouch is the adventure. The Hoard, they say, would be new magic items, new spells, etc. In this particular one, it's going to be new traps. We'll talk about those. Computer program, we'll talk about, which is just an interesting sign of the times. A one-page movie quiz, and then a comic they're calling Torchlight Tales. The contributors, as I mentioned before, Ian and J.P. McKeown, Peter Walker, Chris Carlton, who's the artist, and then Ian Dickenson, who does the computer program. The first article is a Dungeon Master's Guide. Like a lot of these well-written, thoughtful articles, this one is something that's equally applicable today as it was back in the 1980s. It's targeted towards a young dungeon master, trying to give you some ideas of things to keep in mind that you'll learn with experience, which is you can easily get, and they say, you can easily get overwhelmed with the combat mechanics that don't make a lot of sense, and they sort of criticize that the DMG doesn't do enough to explain that to a young dungeon master, how all the combat mechanics work in real life, as well as the fact you can get overwhelmed with all the books and all the different charts and things you're trying to find. So they get some very practical, very good suggestions here. The first one is you should get yourself a Dungeon Master screen. They said if you like the one that's put out by TSR, you can use that, but you can also just make your own. And as they point out, the key is to put the maps that you need up there, the charts that you need up there, monster statistics, descriptions, etc., up there, and clip them where you have easy access to them. You can see them and get to that information really easily, rather than flipping around on a bunch of scraps of paper or flipping through a bunch of pages in books or a bunch of pages in your notes to try and find things. So sort of thinking about how to streamline the actual play of the game at the table. The second thing that they mentioned in this article, which is also, I think, really, really good, has to do with the way you sort of design your dungeon, which is sort of a less is more approach. So they like to make very brief notes about what's in the room, either in best case scenario, right on the map. And if you can't do that, then just have a really brief description on the page. And then they say, you should be, with a little practice, able to give them the description. Maybe you note a key thing that's in the room, but you don't have to, you don't have to write out to be read at the table. This is a 30 by 20 foot room. The walls are made of stone. The characters see You should be able to just, obviously, you can see the dimensions from your map, and you should be able to sort of create that description for them at the table. That's part of the skill of being a good DM, which I think is absolutely true. They say there's going to be more in the next issue that'll talk more about combat. So very good article, very thoughtful, very good, just as good today as it was back then. Pandora's box is new monsters. We have some good ones. The phantom is this evil presence. They say what you're going to see is sort of a mist ahead of you, and if you walk into it, then you will see some like green spirit shapes moving around, and one character who's inside, if there's only one, it'll be that character. If there's multiple, you roll to see which one will be inhabited by the phantom spirit. No saving throw. I don't know, I might give you the saving throw, and you don't know it's happened, and after it happens, the mist will sort of fade. And then randomly down the road, the spirit begins to fight with the ego, if you will, of the character. And this is an evil force, and it will do things like force you to steal from a character, force you to backstab another character, do something chaotic, do something that'll shove a character into melee, different things that will sort of get other party members in trouble. And then if you figure out that you've been possessed, you've got to go find yourself a high-level cleric to try and get the creature out. And if it does, it just sort of comes out of your mouth and dissipates, and that's the end. So no real damage, although it can cause a lot of damage to the party if you play it right and if you're sort of aggressive as the DM. Our next new monster is the Meridoth. I got a feeling this maybe came from somewhere, but this is a humanoid creature whose scales start right below the eyes, and it's covered in sort of snake scales, and its arms are snakes, and if it hits you, the snake mouth will bite you, and it's super poisonous. They have a comment in here that if you survive, you'll get a permanent adjustment on your poison saving throw. It's not clear. They say -1. It's not clear to me if they mean to lower your dice roll, that makes it easier for you to pass a saving throw, or you're like permanently more susceptible to poison, but that's an added problem of this creature. Next, we have the animated puppets, a little bit of a gonzo, created by the great druid Pinocchio, who made, and these are life-size human figures, and but the wood that he used, they say, was possessed of an evil spirit, and so after he made a few of them, they turned on him, they killed him, and then they all got free, and they're running around the countryside causing mischief. So that's your animated puppet. The next one I like quite a lot. It's very clever, very simple. It's called the Deadly Daffodils. And they say you'll see this, in a glade somewhere, and you'll just smell the scent. If you don't immediately turn away, then you're going to make a saving throw. If you fail your saving throw, you're going to be drawn in. You're just going to, want to inhale that scent, and you'll move into the sort of cluster of daffodils. And then those daffodils will release a semi-translucent, so basically invisible filaments that will cover you, and eventually they'll cover your nose and your mouth. But you don't care because you love the scent, and then after 3 minutes you'll completely suffocate from lack of oxygen and die. So someone's going to have to get a hold, because you won't leave, so some other party member is going to have to get you out of there before those 3 minutes are up and before you've died. And then they say once you look closely, you'll notice there's something on there, and you can just rip it off and it'll be okay. But pretty clever, and obviously if you fail, you'll just fall over, you'll be dead laying in the cluster, and these daffodils will propagate and grow and use your body to provide nutrients to their cluster. So pretty clever, simple, deadly, and totally unexpected, right? Your character's never heard of this before. And finally, we have glue slime, which looks like green slime, except that it's super gluey. And so the main difference is if you attack it, if you touch it, if you hit it with a weapon, that's going to be adhered to the slime, and you can't get loose unless you can kill it. Now it says water destroys it, which is pretty simple if you figure that out. Magical weapons and spells will do damage. Normal weapons will not. And of course, if it gets on you, it'll burn your skin and kill you, or it can get through the cracks in your armor. It takes it a few rounds. It can get in there and kill you as well. Pretty good. Okay, the adventure, The Wondrous Pouch by J.P. McKeown. And 4 to 6 characters, first level, and it says fighters are not very helpful because there's not much combat here. I actually like this. I think it's a pretty clever one. Kind of hard because anytime you do trips and traps, you got to figure out how to do it. Once you know how to do it, it's easy. But in my experience, players can get really frustrated trying to figure this kind of stuff out. So, simple background is there's this sort of saint figure that's died and been buried, and he wanted to just sort of be left alone. Someone's gone and found his relics. Like in the sort of Catholic tradition, they want to take the body and give parts of it to different places, as different churches, right? And so the body's being brought back to, like, would be in your campaign, sort of their version of the Pope, right? And this local priest who knows about this guy does not want that to happen. He hires the party. You got to sneak in. He's stopping over at the nearby castle. You've got to sneak in, find it. The sarcophagus has the body. Sneak it out and bring it back to this guy, and he's going to bury it someplace where he can be just sort of left alone in peace. And so you go into the dungeons, like literally the underground dungeon where they have their cells where they're keeping people. And you got to look around. You have a couple people, guards you got to get by one way or the other. And there's a little bit of a trick to it because you've got to be able to find where this is. And the priest tells you sort of quizzically, like, I sense that the sarcophagus is there in that caravan of people riding by on horseback, but you don't see it. And so he's sort of tipping you off, like, it's not going to be laying there in one of these rooms, right? So if you can find your way in and you can find this sort of extra dimensional space where it's hidden, then your characters go in, and again, there are a few little places to explore, some good traps, but you've really got to sort of get lucky or figure out where to find this thing. And if you do, then you can get out. Again, when you read it, sure, it seems straightforward, but I think for the players it would actually be quite complicated. As they know, there's not a lot of combat, so sneaking around and some spell use are really going to be super helpful in this adventure. But it's a good one. And if your players are good at that, if they're smart players and they like that kind of challenge, then this would be an excellent adventure to play. It's just probably one evening session for sure. And they feature a monster from White Dwarf number 11. I love White Dwarf creature feature and Fiend Folio stuff. And this is the Lapidon. I just thought that was interesting and all they say is, like, here's the creature and it's from White Dwarf. They don't give you any of these stats, so you have to go to the magazine and find it in order to know what the stats are for the monster. The Hoard, which is their miscellaneous new stuff, this time focuses on traps. And so here's the first one, the Rolling Stone and Zombies. It's pretty simple. There's a room at one end that has zombies in it, and apparently the only way out is up this ramp here, right there, right? You got to go up this ramp, and it's sloping. You go up and it goes around the circle and back, and the doors aren't actually doors. They're like trap doors that you probably have to roll in concealment or whatever to find, otherwise you'd miss them. When you get to the very top, there's a zombie who basically said if you see anything, you push this giant boulder, and the boulder rolls down and slopes all the way down, and it'll, sort of Indiana Jones style, crush you if it hits you. They have a couple little ways out of it. It doesn't fill the entire hallway, so if you're smart enough, the circle, right, the ball will go to the outside. And so if you notice that it doesn't fill the hallway, and you notice how physics works, you could say I stand against the inside wall and it'll roll right past you. Thieves could climb walls to get over it, or you could try to jump over it because it doesn't reach the ceiling. But if you miss, then you're going to get pancaked. And at the bottom there's this room, and it has a bunch of zombies in it. And either you've let them out and you're running away from them, in which case the rock will probably squish a bunch of them, or it goes all the way down and crashes at the end, and it's going to break open the door, and the zombies are going to crawl out and come up after you. So anyway, it's clever. It's a clever little trap. The next one they have here is called the Mosaic Floor, and it's basically the black lines are red. So the circle in the middle is red, and the edge of the circle and the little lines to each of these four doors in this room are red. The spirit will appear and give you a little bit of a riddle, and the bottom line is, if you can figure out the riddle, is to walk around the circle. Like when you get to the circle, you have to go all 360 degrees, and then you can walk out any of the four exits. You're fine. Otherwise, you'll break the spell that sort of supports the floor, which is sort of weak, and it'll collapse and you'll fall down. All the outside edges, outside that circle, it just tells you to describe it as yellow, but it's actually yellow mold. And once you're, other than right inside the doorway. So if you step on that, you're going to get, the attacks of yellow mold. If it collapses into the area below, it's just entirely full of yellow mold. So then you got to deal with that. I kind of like that cleverness of that trap as well. And the last one is, there's no diagram. It's just called the Sculptor's Pool. It's water. You stick any part of your body in there, and you're crossing extra dimensional space into a wizard's lair where he's building some kind of a golem. And what they say is the DM's choice, either when you pull your body part back out, it'll just be it'll be basically replaced with solid stone, which you need some kind of spell to undo. Or maybe he'll put a random body part of another creature in place of whatever body part you stuck in. It's, nobody's going to enjoy that, but anyway, it's moderately clever, I suppose. So next we have, and this is a sign of the times, this guy Ian Dickenson has written a computer program that I love this. This is, I don't even know this computer, the Sinclair ZX81 or 16K add-on. It's on a tape, and if you for $1.50 they'll mail you this program he's written. And what this thing will do, and I remember back in the day when you had basic computer programming language and you did this kind of silly stuff. You run the program, it generates a random name, class, and race, rolls the dice, gives you random scores. And then here on page 2, based on those scores, then you click, and the screen 2 will take that strength, takes the player's handbook, and tells you what your adjustments are. You click it, gives you your intelligence bonuses, wisdom, constitutional dexterity, charisma, as you click through the different screens. And that's it. That's the whole program. And they say, which is fantastic, like thieves skills, magic user spells. We didn't have enough space on the program to add that stuff in. We're going to write a whole other program with a whole other cassette disc to have that stuff. That'll be program number 2 coming in the future. It's amazing how bad stuff used to be back then compared to today, right? But it was cool at the time. All right, here's our movie quiz. This is every bit as awful when I look at the pictures in my fanzine as it is on this computer screen. These are the films from the last year, science fiction or fantasy films. And what they said was you write down what movie these pictures are from. If you get it right, they're going to give you they're going to give you the cassette tape of the character generator computer program. That's your reward. I can't tell what any of these is. Maybe number 4 is Indiana Jones. I can't tell. I'd have to check the year and see if that came out recently. The rest of these, I don't have any idea. I don't even know if the pictures were clearer, if I could tell. But maybe some of you guys in the comments down below can figure out what these things are. I think the answers are probably going to be in next month's or next issue's fanzine. Here's our illustration for the comic. It's this obviously Statue of Liberty, and there's a door. And this, I think this might be the takeover of SPI by TSR, but he basically says SPI clung to wargaming, and they didn't go to FRIP. I don't know if that's fantasy role playing, or if that's what FRIP is supposed to stand for, but they failed to turn from wargaming to FRIP, and it's got some religious overtones about, the prophet told SPI they needed to switch, but they didn't, and now they've been taken over. And he's like, this wizard hat at the bottom, what is this place? And they've got the face, fear not, I am he. I think that's supposed to be Gary Gygax. I could be wrong about that. But I think it's supposed to be Gary Gygax, who's sort of like the prophet, and he's telling him, I'll take you to the promised land, which is fantasy role playing. I think I'm reading that all correctly. Anyway, here's the cover. Just says space for sale. They didn't have any advertising there. Although it had a little bit of advertising for Games Day 82 was in there. And then they promise you for next issue, or tell you what's coming next issue. Part 2 of the DM's Guide, where they said they're going to talk about combat. The Hoard, this time will be magic items. Another dungeon on the rack, which will be news and reviews. So, I like that kind of stuff. And their report from Games Day 82, which is happening, I think, in September of 1982. So between these 2 issues, that event will occur. So that's it for Fanzine Friday. Miser's Hoard number 1. This is a really good one. All the kind of stuff that I like in these fanzines, and it's a great one to share. There was some talk, I think, about trying to publish these as a compendium, but I think the editor ultimately said he wasn't sure about his copyright ability to create a new compendium. So these are fairly hard to find, but another example of one of the great fanzines that was created in the 80s over in the United Kingdom. Hope you guys are enjoying the channel and the videos. I hope you're subscribed, and if you've got some friends who might enjoy this, please send them our way. Maybe they will subscribe as well. That's it for this week. Have a great weekend, and until next time, my friends, keep rolling 20s.